Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where, when, or how you're listening. Why are you listening? This is a rather sad Comic Cuts because I want to talk about a good friend of mine, David Slinn, who died recently. I mentioned it in passing last week, but I wanted to do something a little bit special because David was such an intimate part of Bear Alley Books, and certainly a very inspiring person when it came to trying to index and identify the people who created comics in Britain, all the way from 1950s all the way through to the 1970s. David's knowledge of artists was astonishing. He was very much involved in comics, so he got to know a lot about the background details. He had a very questing mind, if you like, and I have no doubt that he asked editors and publishers and the people that he met along the way about their work. So he seemed to know an awful lot about comics when I first spoke to him. Now, I was trying to remember when that was. And I think it was after we moved from one house in Colchester to another in Lexton Road, which would have been about 1993. And I think, again, that I was still doing Comic World, which may have been how we first got in touch, which would have been 1995. So I do remember that I had some long conversations with him and scribbling down notes like a mad thing, and I'd end up with 5, 6, 7 pages of notes. The conversations just roved from one subject to another as he dived down a little alleyway. As you'll know from my writing, I'm very keen on alleyways. So, David, yes, I moved on. I worked for Trinity Mirror and MS Publications, and then left in about 2000, and rather, left the comics indexes behind for a bit. I'm doing various other projects, and one of them was the Trials of Hank Jansen book. That came out in 2004. A year later, I was writing a history of Look and Learn for Look and Learn, and then joined Look and Learn, the picture library. But writing the history of Look and Learn really got me back into the idea of interviewing people, piecing together the history of, in this case, a British educational magazine, but, putting those histories together and how much I enjoyed it. So, about 2006, I think David Roach and I started putting together the War Libraries book that came out in 2007, which was a history of war, battle and air ace libraries. And, in 2007, I started work on the next book, which was to be the Thriller Libraries, although it took a few years for that book to come out. Around September of that year, I phoned up David again because he had done some work for the Cowboy Picture Library, and I wanted to get his insight and memories of working with the editorial staff on that paper. Now, knowing that David would dive around all over the place and it was going to be quite a long conversation, I don't do shorthand. So what I did is I taped it with David's okay. So I still have the tape recording. So what follows is a brief excerpt of David talking about his work on cowboy comics, and I hope you enjoy it. What I'll do is I'll put together some images so that you can actually see what David's talking about. I don't have examples of all of his work for cowboy comics. I only have one. So, but hopefully that will give you an idea of the kind of thing that he was working with and working on. There are a couple of other clips that I will put together. and perhaps I'll talk more about David's life and career with that one. But I know that this is going to take some time to piece together, and I do want to have it out on Friday. So hopefully you'll enjoy this, and it'll give you some insight into what it was like chatting with the astonishing David Slinn, a remarkable man, and I'm very sad that he's now passed. But yeah, it is rather sad, and we'll miss him. But hopefully you'll enjoy this, and yeah, all right. Bye for now.
Anyway, go on.
Oh no, so Alf Wallace, what was Alf Wallace like?
I always liked Alf Wallace. I always got on well with. He very soon afterwards, because he was sent down to to Holton's or Longacre when the dreadful day came. So I sort of knew him. I didn't know him well, and I didn't do an awful lot for him or get involved, because all sorts of things went wrong around that time. But I will tell you a small anecdote, which is have you got a decent collection of them, or only a vague one?
I've got my collection is rather patchy, but I know other people who have far better collections.
Because I think what things I was doing first of all, I did some lettering. That was when I first met Alan Fennell, and he sort of gave me a break on the lettering, and I don't know how many I did, not that many, but then later on in 1959, by that time I'd done a lot of work for Eagle, lettering and little bits of artwork and things like that. I was beginning to really find my feet, and I'm not quite sure how, I'll maybe tell you in more detail when it all comes back to me, but basically I always got on well with Alan Fennell, so even if I wasn't doing work for him, I would sort of keep in touch. Yeah. And he was quite intrigued, though he obviously didn't say too much officially about it. He was quite intrigued that I'd managed to crack it down at Eagle, and therefore was sort of happily engaged down there doing quite a bit, whereas up at Amalgamated I hadn't really made much inroads at all, So I would go down and anyway, by about, shall we say, early 59, my illustration specimens or samples, or whatever you like to call them, which of course I used to take around with lettering on them, and then I'd get lettering jobs but no artwork. Yeah. He looked at some stuff I'd got there, and decided that I had sort of made enough progress, so he put me onto these blinking reprints, where you were given Buffalo Bill to turn into Cancer's Kid.
Oh, right.
And that's really how I sort of started, started to sort of make inroads a bit there. But going back to Alf Wallace was the second of those that I did was one of Colin Merritt's, a thing called the Gold Diggers or something like that, some title like that. And I had to, each job consisted of, as it were, bodging up the artwork and changing the characters and adding all the edges, because you had obviously more space to fill because they'd been taken from photo prints from Sun and Comet. But the key to it was that occasionally you were either allowed or at least told, if you wanted to, you could redraw a frame rather than use the photo print if you thought you could make a better job of Cancer's Kid from scratch rather than trying to alter a not very good photo print. So that was one thing where you could earn a little bit more. But the key thing you were allowed to do, or were told to do, or given a chance to do, was a new frontispiece.
Yes.
So the first one I did, not this was the second one I think I did. The first one I did, I had to redraw twice. Frontispiece with Cancer's Kid on a rearing horse. First one was rejected because it didn't work, and the second one was accepted because, if you like, I'd had the willingness to go away and do it again. So that was all right. But the second one I did was this thing which you may have seen, a sort of hillbilly shack with a granny sitting outside on a rocking chair with two kids fighting amongst the sort of chickens that are scrabbling around in the foreground, and the two characters who the frontispiece was supposed to be all about about half an inch high, coming up over a rise between some pine trees. And I was told, not to my face by Alf Wallace, but via Angus Allen and Alan Fennell, was that Alf Wallace considered that it was more suitable for a Hans Andersen fairy tale than the Cowboy Picture Library, but he was going to let it through. And he did. So, I mean, that sets the scene for you a little bit, does it?
Oh, marvellous.
Yes. So I don't know how many. I think I did 3 or 4 altogether. And then, of course, the famous strike came that summer of 59. Which you sort of can remember, can you?
Yeah, the June of 59.
Yeah.
All the way through August.
Yes, and there was, again, shall I ramble a little bit? Because this is relevant to what I told David Roach, or rather a letter to Paul Gravett, which he sent on to David Roach, was Paul knew nothing about what I described as the Len Matthews' Purge, which took place that summer, when he virtually sacked half the lion and tiger artists, just got rid of them like that overnight. Did you know anything about that or not?
Oh, yes. Well, it's noticeable because who is it? It was Joe Colquhoun disappeared and was replaced by Gino D'Antonio.
Yes, but I'll tell you a bit about that in a minute. But if you look at the late Lion and Tiger, was it Bert Vanderput got the chop from Roy the Rovers?
Yeah.
Various other, I don't know, or even what's his name got thrown out first of all. The Captain Condor chap, Neville Wilson.
Neville Wilson, yeah.
He went, and various others who I'll put names to later on when they come back to me if you need them. But there was a real sort of shakeout out there. What I'd quickly say before we go back to that is what happened to me was that even though the strike was on, things like the Cowboy Picture Library kept going because they obviously were monthlies and they just needed to keep their program together. So I didn't stop working for them, but by the time that the strike was over, I was almost bordering on being given artwork from Longacre. I'm in my own right. So, in a sense, once that strike was over in October-ish, 59, there was a bit of a shake-up going on at what had been Holton's and now become Longacre, with Marcus Morris moving on. And I was lucky, I will backtrack on this in a minute, I was lucky, that's when I sort of got my proper break and was actually sort of given sort of real illustrations to do, and if you like, then almost abandoned the idea of doing any lettering, and certainly, I don't mean this unkindly, certainly didn't think too much about going back to the Cowboy Picture Library for paste-up jobs.
No, I can understand that, yeah.
So, but equally, both Alan and Angus still took an interest in what I was up to, which was rather nice. Looking ahead, yeah.